So back to the beginning. So despoiling the Egyptians. It refers to the book of Exodus, chapter 12, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses. And what did they do? They borrowed of the Egyptians jewels or articles or vessels, depending on the translation, of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. That's what we are going to concentrate on today. So there's often talk about the attractiveness of Christianity. With towering temples we can see all around, sophisticated ceremonies, ornamental attire everywhere. In the past, there was also the so-called union between the throne and the altar. This historical and ideological alignment of political power, the throne, and religious authority, the altar. The state supported the church, and in some countries, well, the state still does, and the church legitimizes the monarchy, gives its legitimacy to rule. Today, added to all this are preachers promising material wealth and physical well-being to the followers of Jesus as evidence of God's favor and blessing. The so-called prosperity gospel, probably more common in the West, in the US and Canada than here in Poland, but it's everywhere. All this popularity is and has always been a very serious threat to Jesus' teachings, however, which because of that have suffered a lot in terms of both the durability and purity. With all mainstream churches all along the line until today, along with the multitude of small ones which are scattered around the world, having either forgotten those teachings completely or distorted them beyond recognition. They no longer look Christian. The result being Christians who misunderstand the Bible or don't understand the Bible, even the very simple and basic things of the Bible. Christians who pray with their lips, "Your kingdom come," because all of them do, with hardly any of them really waiting for that kingdom or looking forward to that kingdom or expecting that kingdom for that matter. Why? Because the church, or rather its perverted version, attracted over the years, over the centuries, too many of those who should never have found their way into it. And this growth of believers in numbers, instead of strengthening the church, weakened the church, gave the church prominence in this world as a political power, that's true, but impoverished it spiritually, with corrupt people taking first seats in church pews everywhere in many different countries. Jesus left us two vivid illustrations of such a church. In Matthew, we can read another parable he proposed to them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge on its branches." Another parable he spoke to them, "The kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took, hid in 3 measures of meal, till the whole was leavened." Those parables, those sayings are very interesting in itself. By many Christians, for example, the first one about the birds, they are taken to mean something great, whereas we know that they do not, because birds in the Bible do not stand for any good individuals. That's why, while talking about the attractiveness of Christianity, as it does have its attractions, Christianity does have its attractions, but only to the right kind of people. So, talking about the attractiveness, we should also talk about what is unattractive about Christianity, because it is unattractive or should be unattractive to another kind of people, those that the gospel is not looking for, and nor should the followers of Jesus be looking for them. In other words, we should preach the word so as to attract some people and repel others, as did Jesus, because that's how it worked with him. He spoke the way which attracted some, the right kind of people, and repelled the others. And it should be the same with us, the followers of Jesus. Otherwise, we will gather in not the right kind, the wrong kind. Here is an illustration from nature, the rose. The rose attracts with its beauty and smell, because as you can see in the picture, it is beautiful, it looks beautiful. But at the same time, the same rose repels with its prickles, thus protecting its flower, which is at risk just because it is so charming, so beautiful. Did you know, probably you did, that the prickles are a defensive defense mechanism in the rose, helping to protect the plant from being eaten by animals, which are a threat to Christians too, because there are animals mentioned in the Bible which are a threat to Christians, to Christianity, to Jesus and his teachings, the likes of birds, dogs, pigs, and wolves, mentioned by Jesus and the apostle in a few places in the Bible. Everything that is of value, of beauty, and of nobleness, which Christianity surely is, must be shielded. Why? So that no carnal or animal characters could ever find any protection, any kind of lodging in it, like those birds in a tree after it got very, very big. Those looking for luxury, looking for fame, easy lives, ready to trade the truth for earthly gains, making wealthy careers and gaining political power, wealth, and social standing, as for example Cardinal Richelieu in France of the Medici family of Italy, just to mention two examples from history. The situation started to go dramatically downhill around the 4th century. Why? Because it was then that Christianity shook hands with the civil power of Rome, opening up Christian thought to heathen religious and philosophical ideas. The result being pagan teachings penetrating Christian circles, with worldly lifestyle and moral corruption becoming a Christian norm, and with most so-called Christians entering the wide gate onto a broad way, believing at the same time and claiming at the same time they were traveling the narrow way. They misunderstood the teachings of the Bible so much that they claimed the opposite of reality was really taking place. A fitting illustration of divergent gates and ways, dissimilar mindsets of people, differing attitudes to life's trials, as manifested by the true as opposed to nominal people of God, respectively, is the story connected with God leading Israel out of Egypt. Recorded in 3 places of the book of Exodus, and that's why we've got this title, The Despoiling of the Egyptians. The 3 places are mentioned. I'm not going to read the numbers, just the verses. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall come to pass that when you go, you shall not go empty, but every woman shall borrow of her neighbor, and of her that dwelleth in her house, jewels of silver, and jewels of gold, and raiment. And you shall put them upon your sons, and upon your daughters, and you shall spoil the Egyptians. And the other one, or another one, speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man, there was a woman, it was a woman there, it's a man here. Let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord will give the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And how it came to pass, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses. That's what we started from. And they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. Borrow is in red because I'm going to start from a few comments about the translation of this verb borrow. What do we learn from the 3 accounts? That God was to give Israel favor in the sight of Egyptians so as to make them give the Jews whatever jewels of gold and silver and raiment they wanted. And the result of that was to be the despoiling of the Egyptians. So much of those jewels and raiment were taken away. Thanks to those spoils, later on the Jews had enough articles, as we know, or jewels, to donate for the purpose of putting up the tabernacle, because they were invited, encouraged by God to offer whatever they had of jewels for the sake of putting up the tabernacle. A linguistic remark seems necessary here, as I said a minute ago, as the Israelites did not borrow from the Egyptians jewels of silver, of gold, and raiment, as rendered by most English translations. They didn't borrow, they asked for them as a parting boon. Let me quote Brother Johnson's comment on that from his Exodus book. The authorized version translation of verse 35 is incorrect. The word rendered borrowed should be rendered asked, as the Hebrew word shall means ask, not borrow. And then he mentions at least 4 different English translations, renderings, which get it right. Twice had God charged that Israel should ask for, not borrow, articles, literally he says vessels, of silver, of gold, and raiment. The way the authorized version renders the verse, one could readily infer, as infidels have inferred, that God charged the Israelites to borrow these things without purposing to return them. The difficulty is easily overcome when the word shall is given its regular meaning to ask. Let's continue. I'm continuing the quote. The whole circumstance is clarified if pertinent Oriental customs are understood. And what were the customs? In the Orient, it is customary at a servant's leaving a master's employ for him to ask whatever he desires as a parting boon. And custom binds the master to give whatever is asked, if it is possible. For a master to refuse such a request is a legal offense and subject to a suit for damages, which is always decided in favor of the servant, if he can prove that he was reasonably faithful. This shows that the refusal of the boon is there regarded as tantamount to a discrediting and defaming of the servant. Hence the law above set forth. Since Israel certainly deserved some compensation for their many years of unrequited service, God charged them to ask for their just parting boon. So seeing the charge of Exodus 3 and its fulfillment were entirely just and reasonable. This disposes of a frequently made infidel charge against the moral teachings of the Bible. And let's have a look at 2 of the translations he mentions, which get it right. Rotterdam, and they asked of the Egyptians, not borrow. And the other one, that is Young, and they, yes, and the sons of Israel have done it, and they ask from the Egyptians vessels of silver and vessels of gold and garments. Garments, mantles, raiment, clothing, clothes, whatever word you use, different renderings get it differently. So they asked, they didn't borrow, never to return. So in all, there were to be 3 parting gifts. Vessels, let's stick to vessels. Vessels of silver, vessels of gold, and garments, mantles, or raiment. All of them asked for, not borrowed, by the Israelites from the Egyptians, as a parting boon, as something they deserved after the many years of service in Egypt. Vessels of gold and silver, what do they represent? They represent divine truths and teachings, because vessels stand for teachings, gold stands for what is divine, and silver stands for what is true, for the truth. The lampstand represents the church, for example, as the enlighteners of the brethren, and its vessels, the vessels of the lampstand, represent the teachings that the enlightening brethren use for the enlightenment of others. We have, an Isaiah, the scripture, be you clean that bear the vessels of the Lord. It's not the literal vessels that need that cleanness, purity, but teachings of the Bible. Those who bear the teachings of the Bible should try to be as clean as possible. The result was the spoiling of Egypt, the literal one of its material assets, and, in the case of the symbolic one, of divine truth and of good character, leaving Egypt with not much more than error and faults. That was to be the result of this asking for jewels and for raiment. Truth servants, shown in every Jewish man and every Jewish woman, in their trialsome dealings, difficult dealings with the normal church, asked for its divine truths, vessels of gold and silver, and asked for its garments. How did they ask for the vessels? By rejecting the error and harmonizing the truth they had, chiefly as contained in the 12 stewardship doctrines of Christianity, taken out of the Christian denominations, and that was started and chiefly performed by Pastor Russell to begin with, who is to be considered the last reformer of the gospel age, and continued by Pastor Johnson and others. But these 2 played the most significant role in this asking for the vessels and for the garments. Let's just have a very quick look at Egypt despoiled of the vessels of gold and silver. Why a very quick look? Because it is the garments that I would like to concentrate on in this talk as more practical use. Yeah, so vessels of gold and silver are the teachings. and the garments are of more interest. So here is the whole list of those 12 stewardship doctrines. I'm not going to discuss them. I'm not going even to read them. I'm just showing you the first six. You can see, you can read it for yourself. The Lord's Supper as a symbolic representation of faith, because it was not obvious. Yes, it became obvious only yes, for some Christian people, and the others didn't accept it. Or the Bible as the Christian faith is the center of unity. The Bible is the center of unity for God's people, not some management, not some pope, not some leader. No. Yeah, so these things may be obvious to us today, but over the years, over the centuries, they had to be fought for. People died for them to show them. So these are the first six. These are vessels of gold and silver. Here is the other six, 12 in number. Well, for example, number seven is justification by God's grace through faith alone in Christ's merit. Of course, Martin Luther was behind it. Justification. So self-evident for us today. But today, even it is not so self-evident for all the Christians. Justification by faith. Don't I have to do something? Go on a pilgrimage, circle the church on my knees until blood gets out of them, or whatever else. Go to the confession, whatever. What's the result of Egypt having been despoiled of the above truths? All of these truths, all of them, are now part of the post-parousia truth. We've got them, we know them, and we cherish them. But they have never found their way to any other of the 12 sects than the one God originated them in. And even the source denominations, where they were started over the centuries by God and his reformers, his little flock members, even those source denominations by now have largely perverted them, ignored them, or forgotten them. That's why Egypt has been despoiled. They were taken out, and they are valued by the truth people today, but not so by the Christianity as such at large, not even by those single source denominations in which God started them, not which started them, because it was God's role more than theirs, in which God started them. They no longer cherish them. Yeah, there are some remnants present, but it's not completely, absolutely pure as it was. Let's now focus on the garments as of more interest to us. Which type? Our virtues or our faults. Garments type our virtues or our faults, depending on the quality of our virtues and faults, whether they adorn us or whether they blemish us, as do our respective garments. Depending on which garment you put on, yes, I mean the one of the two on the right, you will look better, or you will look good, or you will look bad. Yes, because garments can do both things. They can adorn us and they can blemish us. They can make us ugly and pretty. So, and here is a few scriptures to show that garments are used in the Bible to represent all those different virtues, good characteristics that we can put on ourselves and look better. I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful in my God. Why? For he has clothed me. Please look at the vocabulary connected with clothes and putting them on and or taking them off. We will come to that as well. For he has clothed me with the garments of salvation, covered me with the robe of righteousness, as a bridegroom decks himself with ornaments, as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. Jewels can also make somebody beautiful, and jewels in the Bible also represent different characteristics. 12 jewels, precious stones of the revelation in the foundation of the little flock. But now you yourselves are to put off. Yes, now put off. Not on, but put off, take off. All these, anger, wrath, you see, wrath. So anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds. You got rid of the old man. Put it off. And have put on the new man, who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who created him. Therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, put on, again, put on tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long-suffering, but above all these things, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. All of you be submissive to one another, and be clothed with humility. For God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Pride serves as their necklace. Violence covers them like a garment. Two vices, pride and violence. How do we ask for symbolic garments? That's what interests us more today. Not by or through controversially separating the truth from error, as in the case of the vessels, but by trying very hard to manifest the fruits of the Spirit while dealing with the symbolic Egyptians, people of this world, especially when such dealings are more or less of a trialsome, difficult character. I don't know if you know the word trialsome. Most English speakers may not be aware of what it is, but in the truth literature, it is used quite very often. So you, as truth brethren, probably know the word trialsome. So I decided to go for it and use it here. Trialsome, difficult, hard to bear. Mhm. So yes, okay, maybe let me read it once again. So how do we ask for symbolic garments? By trying very hard to manifest, to show, to express, to put on the fruits of the Spirit while dealing with the symbolic Egyptians, people of this world, especially when such dealings get very, very hard because of their attitude toward us. As a rule, antitypical Egyptians take a hostile or a very hostile stand against God's people's ways, especially in the past, no longer so as true as it was in the past, but still true. But in the past, it was more true, which takes the form of bitter thoughts, antagonistic words, frowning looks, and altogether unfriendly and acts of inimical or even persecutory nature. Everywhere, in the family, at school, in the workplace, in the various religious groups dominated as they are by the terrors. If then we try to manifest the Spirit of the Lord in such situations, in our hard, difficult, trialsome dealings with the people of this world, the Egyptians, which is says of if we try to manifest the Spirit of the Lord, which is what the Bible recommends God's people to do, if we do our best to bear any hostile acts with patience, kindness, humility, gentleness, long-suffering, generosity, etc., etc., deep inside always ready to forgive the wrongdoer, realizing they do the wrong because of blindness, because of weakness, or because of both blindness and weakness, we, God's people, ask for the symbolic garments. Graces, if the controlling motive of our words and actions is love, if they grow out of love, they become graces, or virtues. If the controlling motive is something they grow out of, is justice. Well, today it doesn't, we can ignore this difference between graces and virtues. Brother Johnson made that difference because the graces were controlled by love as something deeper, because love is ready for sacrifice, justice not so. So he made the difference between a grace and a virtue. Today, because we are not spirit begotten, we can say, well, virtues for everyone, and it would be wonderful if we had, if justice just controlled everything. But if love is added, so much better. So let's see how the Bible teaches us to ask for robes, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this, that you may inherit a blessing. See that no one renders evil for evil to anyone. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Do not behave like an Egyptian. I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also, and whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him too. Of course, not taken literally, but our attitude that might encourage this kind of treatment towards us. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For so you will heap coals of fire on his head, and the Lord will reward you, how? With more fruits of the Spirit. He will reward you for taking such a stand. Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. Otherwise, you will not be. Do not say, I will do to him just as he has done to me. I will render to the man according to his work. Do not say that, because that's what Egyptians do. They return evil for evil. Do not say, I will recompense evil. Wait for the Lord, and he will save or succor you, depending on the rendering. Persistent attempts on our part to manifest the Lord's Spirit in trialsome experiences with this world will develop, because they develop, will strengthen, balance, and crystallize the individual graces or virtues we need, as all our experiences, we can be sure, of whatever nature are under His guidance, meant for our spiritual and eternal good, as our receiving or our being given the garments consists in this very thing. And I will repeat the same thing. Yes, that's the second time. Probably I will repeat it two more times. So our being given, our receiving the garments consists in this very thing. In the world, taking a hostile view of ourselves, both in theory and practice, and of us manifesting, or at least trying very hard to manifest the Lord's Spirit in the process. That's how it works. So we must both get a hostile attitude towards us in theory and in practice, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to manifest the Lord's Spirit in such situations. And without manifesting the Lord's Spirit in such contexts, in such situations, there would be no development. And so we should try to manifest the Lord's Spirit in such situations instead of copying their spirit, the Egyptians' spirit and actions, as they would under the same circumstances. The world would behave just like that. They would respond in the same way, in the same bad way they themselves are treated. If only we could look upon our trials and experiences from this point of view. What point of view? As opportunities for getting more and more of the Spirit of God and more of the fruits of the Spirit. That's how the fruits of the Spirit come to us. They do not fall upon us with the morning rain or with the spring shower or whatever, but in this very way, exactly precisely in this way. We are put in difficult situations, and in those difficult, trialsome situations, contexts, surroundings, we should do our best to manifest the Spirit of God. We should behave as Jesus would if he were in our position, if he were in our shoes, or in our car, or in our workplace, or in our home, in our class, or maybe on the bus or the train we are traveling at any given moment. Then we could see in a new light those who do us harm and persecute us. See them as Satan's deluded servants. And then, instead of complaining and feeling anger at them, in our hearts we could harbor pity and mercy for them, goodwill of helping them out of this condition. And that feeling, goodwill of helping them out of this condition, even if they mistreat us terribly sometimes, is nothing less than love for our enemies, the highest character achievement in the whole universe. That's how the Bible presents it. But if, in trialsome dealings with the Egyptians, we do not manifest the fruits of the Spirit, if we behave as they would under the circumstances, returning evil for evil, we ask for garments too, but of the opposite kind, the ugly one, which we are to take off, which we are to get rid of, not to retain on us or put on us. So it's also give me the robe, but can you see the difference now? Can you see the difference in the quality of the garments received? They're not the same. The one on the right looks shabby, worn out, frayed, ragged, maybe dirty, maybe with some holes, riddled with holes. It's not the same garment. If our reaction is not according to the Bible, if we do not manifest the Spirit of the Lord, we also get garments, but of the other kind, the one the Egyptians usually get by taking this hostile and malicious attitude and returning evil for evil, whoever they are in touch with. We must remember that acquiring or putting on both virtues and faults works along the same principle, and that is using or not using them. If in trialsome circumstances we manifest the Spirit of the Lord, we ask for a new and fine garment, the picture above. But if we manifest the opposite spirit, we ask for a second-hand and ragged one, making us look more and more like the Egyptians and less like the followers of Jesus. So let's always ask for the better quality of the garment rather than the second one and ragged and torn in places and dirty and stained and whatever else, maybe filthy completely, whatever else as this. There are varying degrees of dirt, so there are varying degrees of bad character possible in this world with the Egyptians. If we think, feel, speak, and act wrong toward others, we lose from our hearts the good we may have had or been before. We do. And if we continue like that sufficiently long, maybe all our lives, that would be a tragedy. We may get despoiled of all the good still present in us, replacing all that good that was in us with evil. But of course, it takes time. Fortunately, okay, so unfortunately, it takes time, a lot of time to develop a good character. I say unfortunately because, well, if it happened in one day, one good act and I'm perfect. So unfortunately, it takes time, many, many years. But fortunately, it also takes time to degrade, to deprave, to ask and get, receive all those dirty, shabby clothes from the Egyptians and put them on until we look so miserable that God or Jesus no longer want to look at us. Experience shows that the Lord's people acting in harmony with the Lord's Spirit, instead of softening the unrighteousness and the wickedness of evildoers, tends to increase it in them. That's what Jesus meant by walking an extra mile or giving an extra rope if somebody compelled us to do. As did God's benevolent acts toward Pharaoh. We remember that story, yes, how mercy shown by God to Pharaoh, toward Pharaoh, hardened that character, because that's what evil, bad characters do. They have to be treated the way they should be, but it's not for us Christians to do the job. God will take care of them when their time comes. So the Lord's people acting in harmony with the Lord's Spirit usually increases the unrighteousness and the wickedness of the world of the Egyptians toward us. And the result is ever greater undermining and ruining of their characters in the process. They lose, they are losing. Every unrighteous act, word, destroys the owner, the possessor, the one who produces that word, or who is the author of the word or of an action. Every evil, unrighteous act leaves a trace. Let's see how it is shown in the attitude of the Egyptians toward Israelites, first in God's announcement of the fact. And the Lord said to Moses, I will bring yet another more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. Afterward, he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will surely drive you out of here altogether. And the important thing is, he will drive you out of here. And when the time came, that's how it came to pass, and the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste. Go away quickly, as far as possible. We don't want to see you any day longer, any hour longer, any minute longer. The symbolic Egyptians hasten, urge, rush the Lord's people to go away, in order to the faster get rid of them, to push them away. How? By making their attitude increasingly hostile towards spiritual Israelites, very much like the literal ones did back then toward literal Jews in ancient Egypt. They will not only let you go, they will drive you out of Egypt. Now, a few words about God's favor for his people, again poorly rendered in most English translations, and Brother Johnson will help us again, and from the same Exodus book. Sorry. I will give the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. As can be seen from Dr. Young's rendering, only Dr. Young managed to do it the right way. This clause should be rendered. I will give the favor of the people, peculiar to the people, in the eyes of the Egyptians. The expression in Exodus 3:21 is similar. I will give the favor of, peculiar to, this people in the eyes of the Egyptians. At first sound, this expression seems odd. Yes, it does. But it is most fitting when we consider the antitype. At first sight, the persecutions, wrongs, and other evils heaped upon God's people by the antitypical Egyptians seem not to be favors. To the natural man, they are the reverse of favors. But when we recognize that the Lord works out character good from them in us, they are seen to be favors indeed. Let me read the part in red again. When we recognize that the Lord works out character good from them, from all those persecutions and bad things happening to us from the Egyptians, when we realize that God works out character good from them in us, they are seen to be favors. Because without them, we wouldn't be able to acquire, to ask and acquire and get those new, beautiful, pretty, nice looking, fresh and new robes, garments that will make us beautiful at the end of the day. So then they are seen to be favors, but you need to take this stand, this position, this point of view. Otherwise, you will not see them as favors. Oh, yes, the scriptures, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. All things, including all those nasty ones, nasty from human standpoint. And 2 Corinthians, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. But there is a condition. While we look not at the things which are seen in our everyday life, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, today, here and now, but the things which are not seen are eternal. But most people do not see them, because one of their eyes is not healthy, is not whole. It does not show them the right perspective. They only have one eye, which can see here and now, and the other one is not working, is passive, dormant, whatever we call it. It's not working, it's not operational. And because they cannot find themselves in the right perspective to the things of this world and of the future, because they can see no future, no eternity. They can only see here and now. So they put all their ambitions, all their treasure here in this life. They are called, so that's a quote again. They are called the favor, I continue the quote. They are called the favor of God's people, not because the antitypical Egyptians mean them as such. Yeah, no. The reverse is the case from their standpoint, the Egyptians' standpoint. But they are the favor of God's people through God's overruling and through his people accepting them as such. God's people accepting them as such. From an appreciation of the spiritual purpose of their bestowal. Certainly, such persecutions, wrongs, etc., if inflicted upon antitypical Egyptians, wouldn't be considered by them as the favor of the Egyptians or peculiar to the Egyptians. They don't want this kind of favor. Give it to someone else, not to us. For they resent any evil done them, and as a rule are thereby embittered and thus damaged in character. When evil happens to people, most of them are embittered and damaged in character. That's the way it works. Let us, dearly beloved, who have spiritual discernment, learn to love the evils that we undergo as the favors of or peculiar to God's people, even as St. Peter puts it while speaking of our suffering wrongs for righteousness. This is thankworthy or acceptable. Yes, I have the whole scripture here. For this is thanksworthy if a man for conscience toward God endure grief, suffering wrongfully. For what glory is it, if, when you be buffeted for your faults, you shall take it patiently? But if, when you do well and suffer for it, you take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. Brother Johnson says that literally both thankworthy in the first line and acceptable in the last one are grace or favor. So this is favor. And this is favor with God. This is grace with God. If you are treated wrongfully and take it patiently. What is meant here then is not God giving the people favor, but God giving the favor of the people, peculiar to the people. Do you see the difference? So it's not God giving the people favor, as most renderings have it, but God giving the favor of the people, peculiar to the people. Meaning the favor in question is not just any favor, but a unique kind of favor, typical and characteristic of unique people only, which God's people surely are. And no other people would ever appreciate this kind of favor. So do we? Do we appreciate this kind of favor? Are we more like the Israelites who appreciate this peculiar favor of being of being allowed by God to be mistreated, treated badly, persecuted sometimes, or harmed in any other way? Or would we rather God gave that favor to somebody else? This hostile attitude of the Egyptians toward Israelites is shown in one more way. And the Lord gave the favor of the people in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. And they spoiled the Egyptians. Mistranslated in the same way as Israelites borrowing things from the Egyptians. If the Israelites had borrowed the vessels and garments, the Egyptians would have lent them. But we know they didn't borrow them. We know they asked the Egyptians for them as compensation for the many years of service. So they lent them unto them, again, is not correctly translated, rendered. Fortunately, Yahweh comes to our rescue again, and Jehovah had given the grace of the people in the eyes of the Egyptians, and they caused them to ask. They caused them to ask. Egyptians cause them to ask, not lend them the things they want to learn. So the Egyptians do not lend Israelites the valuables in question. They cause them to ask for those valuables, for jewels and for raiment. How? Always in the same way, by taking a hostile stand against God's people, thus causing them to strenuously manifest the right spirit in their contacts with them. Whenever somebody takes a hostile stand attitude towards us, in words or in action, that's an invitation from God for us to strenuously try to manifest the right spirit. If we do, we develop in the right direction. If we don't, we develop in the wrong direction. Please note that the Egyptians can also be found among the brethren. We, the brethren, can become Egyptians to one another sometimes. I hope not very often. Who in contacts with others, with contacts with others, be it of the world or of the brethren, take lightly or ignore the directives, the instructions of the Holy Spirit, and act out what their fallen flesh tells them to do. If the other party does not return evil for evil, then they themselves are deprived, despoiled of some good they might have had or been before. If the other party does not return evil for evil, only one party is the loser. If the other party also do despite unto the Spirit or grace, as is the case among the worldly, who usually in such cases, they just jump at each other's throats, then both parties spoil each other's good they might have had or been before. If this happens to us, as the Lord's people, it means that in such situations we turn from Israelites receiving garments into Egyptians losing the garments, giving them away to the other party, if the other party can climb up and remain on a higher level than us. If they cannot, the other party, both parties are the losers, each of them swallowing their own poison. If then it's a lose-lose situation. Can you see how the face of this gentleman, who is still one of the Lord's people, but starting to behave like an Egyptian, becomes the face of a worldly? They're exactly the same. Exactly the same. So let each and every one of us examine and vet our reactions in such trialsome, hard situations, with the brethren in the class, with the family members, with colleagues at the workplace, neighbors, strangers in the street, on the train, plane, wherever. If it is graces and virtues that increase in us, we are Israelites moving in the right direction to Canaan. But if it is the opposites that multiply in us, we are Egyptians or are becoming Egyptians, despoiled, deprived of the good we might have had or been before. Thus, the correct reading of Exodus 12 should be, "And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses. And they asked of the Egyptians vessels of silver and vessels of gold and raiment." Asked, not borrowed, the first correction. "And the Lord gave the favor of the people in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they caused them to ask, and they spoiled the Egyptians. The favor of the people, not give the people favor, but gave the favor of the people, peculiar to this kind of people, and they caused them to ask, not lend." So these are the three instances where the rendering has to be corrected. Now it is underlined and in bold in my presentation. Our efforts can be compared to a man's fight in a river against a strong current. We can imagine a man standing and fighting against a strong current. The strong current is, of course, our natural and sinful tendencies of our fallen human nature, making it easy to go with the flow, which the Egyptians usually do, go with the flow. Doing nothing in that river is yielding to the current of the sinful tendencies, going with the flow, retaliating if harmed by the Egyptians in any way, returning evil for evil whenever provoked. Some resistance shown means partial blocking of the sinful tendencies, thanks to which at least we stay put, which is of some value in itself, in that we do not give vent to what our old Adam urges us to do, no as after what. Not enough, but that is not enough for a devoted Christian, though. Strong resistance means progress, working against the flow, subduing the old Adam, crucifying the old Adam, even in trialsome circumstances of our lives, and even when insulted, harmed, or persecuted by the Egyptians, with whom we are not falling further and further away from perfection into deeper and deeper sin, being despoiled of the remnants of God's image still present in us, still present in mankind, as the unconsecrated do. Nearing the end of my presentation, let me quote fitting words by Apostle Peter. If you are reproached for the name of Christ, blessed are you. For the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you, develops you in the fruits of the Spirit. On their part, or by them, the world, he is blasphemed, but on your part, by you, he is glorified. The same what we've been talking about in our talk. It is blasphemed by the Egyptians because they are a disgrace to that spirit. They defy that spirit, do not value it enough, if at all, do not consider it to be worthy of imitation, striving for, manifesting in all life situations. It is glorified by you, by God's children, because they respect, love, and long for it, as the value to aspire to acquire, to maintain in any circumstances, including the most difficult and hard ones, trialsome ones from the human standpoint. Crowning the whole process of asking and receiving these desirable articles, jewels, is the use to which the parting gifts were to be subsequently put. One more thing from that story. You shall put them upon your sons and upon your daughters, and you shall spoil the Egyptians, upon your sons and upon your daughters. Let me remind you that those who did the primary asking were pastors Russell and Johnson, as the ones initially used by God to take over those valuables from Egypt. But thankfully, thanks to their influence, example, and teachings, they subsequently adorned their sons and daughters, the Lord's people, including us, with what they had asked for and obtained from the antediluvian Egyptians, both the vessels of divine truth and the robes of Christian character in its graces and virtues, depending on the source, love or justice. Okay, and let us wear those valuables daily, especially the garments, and never return to the false teachings and rags of character we once used to wear and adorn ourselves with. May God add his blessings. Thank you for your attention.